Filming. So we are in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and I am capturing some conversation with Ron Stuart and Raymond Arnold Jr. They met at the NASCAR Hall of Fame in January of 2015, and Ron is in the area to attend the Charlotte 600, right, Ron?
Yes, ma'am.
He's from Indianapolis. He is a Wendell Scott enthusiast.
Yes, ma'am.
He has been for how long, Ron?
Since back in the 60s.
Okay.
With what little information we got about NASCAR in Indianapolis at the time.
Okay.
And television being 3 weeks behind on maybe 3 or 4 races a year that they televised. Thanks to Stock Car Racing Magazine, I was able to follow it more.
Okay.
And, an underdog.
Okay.
I root for the underdogs, just like today with Jennifer Jo Cobb. It's they do the best with what they got,
Right.
and it's fantastic.
Okay. And then, so when did you become interested in Mr. Wendell Scott?
Probably more into the early 80s.
Okay.
I did follow his racing career to some degree, here again with limited information, not like today's internet.
Okay.
But after he retired and his injury at Talladega and pretty much semi-retired, I picked up more on himself personally, and definitely into the late 90s, even more so after his death. Not that he wasn't an interesting man before, but my intensity in the individual became
Increase.
much more.
Okay.
And now with the Hall of Fame, it even made it bigger.
Okay.
And
Well, here we are. So you met my dad, Raymond Arnold Jr., who worked with the Scott team. Dad, go ahead and kind of tell us how you met Mr. Scott and some things that were memorable. What year?
Wendell at the Spartanburg County Fairground.
Okay.
Been in 1962. I had just taken delivery of my brand new 62 Impala photo hardtop 327 power pack that I ordered directly. I'm thinking I'd had the car probably 2 weeks. That was a stock car race at the fairground. Wendell Scott was there. They'd been talking about him on the radio all week, and he went out to qualify, and the car was speed up, shut off, it was acting up. He had a carburetor problem. So he came in the pits, and I went over where he was. I went in there with David Pearson, but I got to looking at Wendell's car and trying to help him, trying to figure out what the problem was. And I said, I think you got a carburetor problem. He said, yeah, I believe I do. And I looked at it, what's the number on it? He got the number off of it. And I said, I believe my car got the same carburetor. So I went out to the parking lot, and it was the same carburetor. Took the carburetor off my brand new Chevy. I think I'd had the Chevy probably a month. And I took the carburetor off, put it on his car, and went back out to practice. And he came back in, he was just grinning. He said, this darn thing ran like it had stole something going around that corner. He said, can I go ahead and qualify? I said, yeah, go ahead. So he qualified, started 7th place, and finished 9th that night, running my carburetor. And,
Did you get it back?
He was getting ready to tearing down stuff. He said, well, I sure wish I could keep that carburetor. You can't keep that carburetor. I said, you might get one like it, but you can't keep this one. So anyway, we took the carburetor off the race car, put it back on my car, and he followed me home. But he was pulling the race car with the Cadillac limo that he had bought from some. I think it was an hour and a half President Cadillac.
Okay.
Anyway, that's what he was towing the race car with. So he went on, followed me home, and I didn't want to leave the car parked on the street. I said, we need to put this thing in the driveway. So I got in and cranked it up, and when all this noise blasted out, folks from the whole block of people came out to see what the noise was. And I was going down the hill backwards in the race car, put in the driveway. The next morning we got up, it must have been a dozen people out there looking at this car, they're riding on it. Anyway, that's really how, that's the first time I'd been directly in contact with him. And I met him at the racetrack, and from then till he passed away, we were buddies. We were friends. I'd meet him at tracks wherever I could go and get back in time to get up and go to school the next morning, because I was teaching school at the time. So I've been as far as Savannah. I ran in Savannah one night, and I left Savannah and drove back to Spartanburg. I got home about 6:15, had to leave about 7:30 going to school. But that's how we got hooked up and stayed hooked up together until his funeral.
So what races did you find the most memorable? Were there some moments or some things that you remember the most out of all those years?
I guess the one that I hate to have to remember is the one in Talladega when he got hurt. But Darlington was a pretty good track for us. Maryville, Rockingham, Charlotte, Atlanta. I went pretty much all of. I never went to the West Coast. I never went to California, Texas, but everywhere else, I probably at some point over the 15, 20 years that I knew him, I was pretty much all of them.
So what interest did you have in racing before you met Mr. Scott?
I had, my mother had 3 first cousins that were running. It was James Brothers, Calvin Williams.
And they were in South Carolina, Spartanburg?
Spartanburg County.
Okay. So Ron, what interest did you have in racing? When did you become interested in racing? You've raced, I know you do some racing in Indianapolis. Have done.
My first big experience with racing was my first 500 that I attended.
Okay. Indy 500.
Indianapolis 500.
Okay.
My high school band marched at the night before the 500 parade, and then we marched at the track the following day, which I believe, if I'm correct on my years, I think it was 1961. And 61, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
But that was the first 500 race I went to, and from then on I was kind of hooked. Which of course followed Indy cars
right.
at the time, champ cars, big cars, midgets, and sprints. I did follow a little bit of NASCAR with stock car racing, and here again, world of sports back in that time. And then after, continued on with that. So after I got out of the service, I decided to buy my first race car. I like sports car racing. It was a Farmer Ford, which we go left and right, which the cup cars do on a couple tracks now. But anyway, followed there, which had to have a number. I picked 34. My car was orange. Kind of resembled, I think, Wendell's 68.
Yeah.
Color and the number, and that was my number most of the time, except for one occasion when, for some reason, Walter Payton got it. I don't know why, but anyway, so forth. That and it was not that I didn't enjoy racing, but I was a budget racer. If I had the money, I went. If I didn't, we stayed at home. And it was working at the car at night, getting ready for the weekend or whatever. It was, well, in the back of my mind, if Wendell can do it, I can do it. So I had a friend, much like Mr. Ray was to Mr. Scott, who helped me quite a bit. And it became kind of a family affair. When we could do things, we did. If we couldn't, we didn't. But it still carried on until after many years I gave it up to, because
Right.
age does catch up with us for some reason.
You're right.
It does.
Even though we think we can do it, but our mind says, no, we better not do it.
Right. Right.
And, it was a thrill, and I wouldn't change a thing. I enjoyed it very much, and now I live my racing by incidences or great experiences like this to meet people through NASCAR and other forms of racing, and we'll continue forward with it until I'm gone.
So what is it about Mr. Wendell Scott that interests you, or why are you an enthusiast for the Wendell Scott team?
As I said, to a degree, Mr. Scott was an underdog. Factory backing is a must.
Right. He didn't have any of that.
And when you do it on your own, you persevere for years. That 15th place finish this weekend is the same as a win when there's 15 factory teams ahead of you.
Yep.
You're a winner, even though it may be 15th. And when you do your best with what you've got, you're still a winner. And and like I say, as a budget racer, I knew I wasn't going to
Connected
win that
with that.
often.
Yep.
I might get lucky, which I did a couple of times, but sometimes that 5th place finish was just as good as a win, because I know it was absolutely, I couldn't have
The
done
best
any
you could
better.
do, right? Right.
And I'm sure Mr. Scott had them days too. Not that I won't say that I patterned my life after him, but there was many aspects of his life that I could say, well, yes, he did it. Don't give up. Keep going. In which
That's
he did
right.
his career. He persevered, and he lived a dream. And I did live part of my dream in so much of the aspect that I knew I was never going to be in the Daytona or the Indianapolis 500,
Right.
but I had my little Daytonas and my little Indianapolis 500s in my career, so that was good.
Okay. Okay. So, Dad, did you feel that that Wendell Scott would get into the Hall of Fame one day, and did you ever lose hope of that happening?
No, I never lost hope. I figured that probably by some way, hook or the crook, that we would make it, or he would make it into the Hall of Fame, being the only black driver to run continuously year after year. There were one or two other guys who would come in for one race in somebody else's car, and that was to draw a crowd. But regardless to who they were that they brought in, nobody brought any more people, larger crowds to the track than
Then
Wendell.
Mr. Scott.
So, I mean, it was unfortunate that somebody didn't see that he was as much a race driver as some of the other black guys were ball players. Hank Aaron, some of the guys in football, boxers. They were champions in their sport, and I just think Wendell was a champion in his sport.
I don't believe there's any doubt that if he'd had factory equipment
Right.
or a major sponsor,
Yep.
that he would have won many races. Maybe not, 50 or 60, but I could see an easy 10, 12, maybe 20 that he could have won with some factory backing or so forth. That
I think he probably could have won as much as Richard Petty won if he'd had Richard Petty.
and that's probably true.
Yeah.
At that time, Richard Petty had the best equipment there was.
Best equipment out there.
But you have David Pearson, who had equal equipment and won equivalent to half as many races as Richard did,
Well, he won
and didn't run as many.
2 championships. He didn't run as much as Richard did.
Right.
But he won both championships.
And that's to take nothing away from both of them, who
Oh,
were
yeah.
great drivers.
Yeah.
And I'm just so happy that Wendell is finally being remembered for the individual he was, who
Yeah.
persevered, who showed us never give up.
And didn't take no for an answer.
And that's exactly right. I can do it, you can do it, and that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And the answer is, we don't understand no excuse. You
Right.
just do it. And it was a happy day of my life to see him go in the Hall of Fame, which fortunately was able to meet you people. And just another great contact in racing. And this is a great day for me, sitting here with Mr. Ray and enjoying companionship, spinning some old stories and these are stories that needs to be told from the older people involved with NASCAR that we younger people don't know about.
Right.
And I'm not going to rat on Mr. Pearson right now. I'll let Mr. Ray do that. But that way it'll be your fault. He's a friend of yours, and I like David too.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
And I'm sure in many of the drivers past and even crew members,
Right.
there's just some fantastic stories that need
Should be
get-
told.
need to
And
be
like we were
told.
saying earlier, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this video, I will send it to the Hall of Fame and show them, here's an example of people getting together, telling stories. Can we do this on a bigger scale? Can we have, maybe some sponsorship or involvement from the Hall of Fame to get some of the drivers who are still around to come back, their crews?
And car owners,
Right.
crew members,
Right.
and maybe twice a year or 3 times a year get together and bench race.
Right.
Relive the stories of yesterday.
Bring
The
some
younger people have
paraphernalia,
no
bring
idea
your
about.
replica, bring your photos, bring your
Anything connected
scrapbook.
with
Right.
the late 50s to, I would say, maybe 80s generation
Right.
gap there, that 20-year period or so, that these stories will soon be forgot
Right.
and never be retold again.
Right.
And they need to be out there. And I, for one, I will, if we could get, I'll travel the distance to try to be here to hear the stories. And there definitely will be learning experiences, I'm sure, because I'm sure what Mr. Ray went through with the NASCAR and Wendell, and not, we won't use a color barrier here by any
Right.
means. I'm sure there was other independents that did the same thing. And like Wendell said, one spot meant whether I slept in a truck or a motel the next week.
Right.
And I'm sure, and don't begrudge today's drivers for their $1 million.
Right. Right.
It's fantastic that it's being done.
Right.
But there's still racers out there somewhere. There's a young 8, 19-year-old kid doing dirt tracks with the go-karts, quarter midgets that who will be the superstar. And that young man or girl needs to know what Mr. Ray's generation went through.
Right.
That we can't lose that. That is part of NASCAR history.
Yep.
Right. And even from going to the Hall of Fame and the people that were there that came back to, attend, that might have been a part of the earlier eras, everybody did not have an issue with Scott's race. When I say race, him being African American, like they wanted to help out, but they had to do it so they wouldn't harm themselves. Like they were like,
Absolutely.
I wanted to help you with this, but right, discreetly, right. They was like, I wanted to do more, but I didn't want anything to happen to my family, So they were sympathetic. They wanted to see him succeed because they saw the ability, and they saw, well, if he had this, this, and this, he could be
Absolutely.
performing much better.
Mr. Leonard Wood, he spoke at a club event I went to Saturday, and I walked up to him as he was signing autographs. He had a little break, and I thanked him. Well, first of all, congratulate him for going to
Right.
the Hall of Fame, and then I thanked him for helping out Wendell Scott. And I saw a big smile on his face, and he said he was a good guy.
Right.
And And he said, "Thank you for thanking me," and it made me feel good. But I know him and Glenn helped some, Hallman and Moody did, but it still wasn't the best stuff that they had.
Right.
And I understand that, but they did contribute some, and I'm sure they would have done more.
Right. If the era had been different.
And that's right. Racing has changed a bunch, but so has baseball with Jackie
Right.
Robinson.
All the sports. Yeah.
Not you being much closer to Wendell in that situation. I don't know what Jackie's personal issues was because I don't know anybody connected with him, but I would think Wendell faced more adversity than Jackie Robinson ever did.
Yeah.
He had no organization behind him.
Yeah. He was out there on his own, pretty much.
Yes.
No
But I don't-
sponsorship.
And I'm sure probably the early track races, which not having been there was some adversity and hardship. But I think as time progressed, much like the book says, Wendell was accepted because of who he was, a racer, a man,
His heart, his compassion
and
for it.
give it all, and not because the color had anything to do with it. And my personal beliefs, and I don't think I'm wrong, but it could be. And it's still a fascinating story, his life. And having met his family, there's no doubt he raised wonderful kids, and they all turned out real well.
Yep.
And I think his desire and perseverance went with them too. So I'm stumbling for words right now. So this is probably not very good. We've got
That's all right.
How about here, Mr. Ray, a little bit? Your turn.
You know,
We'll let you wrap it up, Dad.
when they had the Wendell Scott Day in Danville, 2 years ago?
Yes, a few years ago, when they did the marker,
Yeah.
made him part of the Historical Society up there in Danville.
We counted for a little while. There was 6 times as many white people there as there were black. And that was Wendell Scott Day in Danville. There were 6 times more white folks than there were black folks.
I could believe that. And I think towards the end of his career, not that I was at the races, but I have heard that there was, he got bigger cheers
Oh, yeah.
almost than Richard
Yeah.
Petty.
Yep.
And it was not just black people, it was white people.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah, 'cause that's who was at the racetrack.
and I would have been one of them.
Yeah.
There was no problem with that. Which I did get to see him race in Richmond.
Did you ever get to meet him?
I never got to meet.
Okay.
But I did see him race one time in Richmond, and
Okay.
well, it was actually my first NASCAR race. Well, it's the Cup or Grand National back then. Before I went overseas, I think Richard Petty won or David, one of the two, but I think Wendell finished 14th, maybe 15th somewhere. Top 20 finish, independent driver.
Yeah.
I think it was great, and so I actually did get to see him live, and that probably started me more into the individual himself, more than just okay, he's in the 34 car out here racing around on the weekend or this. And I don't mean racing around, not being competitive or anything. That when you see something, or you're a guy you kind of like, whatever it is, you feel a little more personal attached to it. If that kind of follows up, that okay, I actually did see him race, and so that could continued on. Unfortunately, his accident, he basically retired. But so I did get to see him race. And that was good.
Okay.
And you was probably there crewing.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't get a chance to meet you or see you because I was.
Y'all might have walked right past each other a few times.
You was over there on the front stretch. You got the good seats.
Well, no, I was in the pits.
Well, okay. That's true.
I had a bad seat to tell there.
It
Because after we went down there with this, he had borrowed, I want to say it's $112,000
For the Talladega?
for that car that took the Talladega and tires and a spare engine. We'd never been up with a spare engine before.
Right.
You know, we do well to have a spare timing chain.
That kind of worried me when I was racing. I didn't have many spare parts, and some of the people said, "Well, you never qualify good on Saturday." And I go, "If I crash on Saturday, I don't get to race on Sunday." And they go, "Well, what does that mean?" And I said, "I would blame Saturday on myself for being kind of silly. But if I crash on Sunday after the green flag goes, then I'm going for it.
Right.
So it's okay."
Right.
And we won't talk about a few of those, but
Uh-huh.
we did have them. Or make parts. I've hammered, well, I'm sure you did too.
Yeah.
Necessity is the mother of invention, and
Yep.
whatever works.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, we will wrap up this time, and thank you, Ron and family, for coming down. And I know you don't like to be on camera, so and enjoying this evening, this dinner with us. And thank you for inviting us and staying connected with us.
Well, we hope that continues. It's just not a NASCAR relationship, but through NASCAR, we formed a friendship.
Right.
And I'm sure there's going to be hopefully a lot more mini storytelling times.
Yeah.
And, I will say through NASCAR, I have met some wonderful people. So NASCAR can't all be bad. And
Right.
it doesn't have to be on the track.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. Thank you both. Till next time.
Sounds good.
I'll go for that.